Welcome to another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Player Ranks. In this series, we rank various Yu-Gi-Oh! Themes based on your comments and suggestions. Come back every tier list Tuesday to see an all-new installment of this series. Alright guys, we are back with another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Player Ranks. Today we're going to be doing Exodia. This is one that's been requested for a very long time, but obviously I was just waiting around. I thought they would release some kind of support for Exodia, but they haven't released anything. But this is Exodia. This is all of the Exodia cards that exist. As always, there's now a playlist available that basically has all the videos, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Player Rank videos available. So if you want to go watch them in succession, you can go do that. And also, do you want to make your Master Duel experience a whole lot better?
Are you ready to take your Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel play experience to a new level? The Untapped GG Companion is here for you. Use the deck tracker to know exactly what cards you have in your deck, and to go over any cards you aren't familiar with yet by hovering over them. It instantly updates when you draw a card, and automatically hides if you check your extra deck or graveyard. This is the perfect tool to help you master a new deck. The Untapped GG Companion also lets you import decks directly into the game in seconds. Copy any YDK or YDKE deck string, create a new deck in-game, click the Start Auto Import button, and let us take the wheel. Once the duel is over, check your win rate on your personal stats page. Brag among your friends and share your decks so they can import them into the game too. Start your path to master today by downloading the Untapped GG Companion at ygom.untapped.gg.
Alright guys, we're back. Today, like I said, we're ranking all of the Exodia parts and all of the Exodia cards. This one's a little bit complicated just because there's so few cards. There's probably more tiers than there are cards, to be honest with you, so we'll see how this goes. Right off the bat, we've got Exodia Necros. Exodia Necros is an easy F tier. This card has never been good. The summoning condition is way too bad. Contract with Exodia is its card. This honestly should be a ritual, if I'm being honest. This should have been a ritual because it's essentially a ritual monster, and this should have been a ritual spell. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure actually in the show, Gozaburo, which is Kaiba's father, uses Exodia Necros, and he, in that build, this is actually a ritual monster too. So I don't know why they changed it, because this is essentially a ritual monster. But basically what this does is, basically if you have all 5 pieces of Exodia in the graveyard, all the limbs and the head, you can activate this card and then special summon Exodia from your hand. That summoning condition is already terrible, right? Because you need a spell card, you need Exodia in the hand, and you need to get all 5 pieces in the graveyard. In the show, he used the best Yu-Gi-Oh card of all time, which is Painful Choice, to put the Exodia pieces into the graveyard. That's what he used, and we don't have access to that. We haven't had access to Painful Choice in over 20 years, so I wouldn't even know how you would even get the 5 pieces into the graveyard, and then you would have to activate Contract of Exodia and have Exodia Necros in hand, which is in a lot of ways unsearchable. Of course, you have Small World, which can essentially search every Yu-Gi-Oh card ever, but this card is very hard to search and very hard to set up. Now, what do you get for the payoff of doing all of this? You get Exodia Necros. Exodia Necros can't be destroyed by battle and can't be destroyed by card effect. Those two things, by card effect of spell and trap cards only. It can be destroyed by monster effect. It can be bounced to the hand. It can be banished. Anything can happen to it as long as it is not a spell and trap card that is trying to destroy it. Also, if any Exodia piece whatsoever leaves the field, this card is automatically destroyed by its own effect. Those are just terrible effects so far. Also, the other issue with this card is it's 1800 attack, and every standby phase it gains 500 attack, but it's only 500 attack, so it only comes out at 1800 attack. During the next standby phase, it becomes 23. That's still nothing, so almost anything can get over it, even though it can't be destroyed by battle. The other problem is this was released, I want to say in 2004, and almost immediately they would release Chaos Sorcerer, Blackluster Soldier, they would release cards like Chaos Emperor Dragon, like all of the cards that would easily out this card without even trying. So this card is honestly, is one of those cards that I think from an aesthetic standpoint, I think it looks really, really cool. Like, look at this card, right? So let's take a look at it. Like, look how awesome this card looks. Wait, let me, there it is. Look how awesome Exodia Necros looks. Like, it looks like such a cool card, but we'll never actually, like, get to see anybody use it because it just absolutely is just trash. It's probably, in terms of artwork, my favorite Exodia card. almost by far. Like, it looks so cool. It's like this green aura around it. It's black. Like, it looks so awesome, but it's so terrible. Like, it's an unusable card, and that's one of the frustrating things about it. It's hard to summon, and it's not even worth summoning. So unfortunately, it has to go into F tier. All right, next up is Exodios. This card is actually a half decent card. I probably put it in B tier. Like, it's good in Exodia. It's not really good in an Exodia deck. It's not good for trying to win with its own condition, but it's actually quite good as a Yu-Gi-Oh card from a design standpoint. So basically what this card does is in order to summon it, you have to shuffle all monsters in your graveyard back into the deck. Now, that might not seem like a great effect, but in a lot of decks that can actually be fairly good. So in like Danger decks, Dark World decks, cards like World Chalice decks that benefit from having all of their cards shuffled back into their deck, this is very, very good because it lets you recycle resources very good. Tenyi decks. This is just a lot of decks over the years that I've played that this card benefits significantly from by just shuffling back all of the cards back into your deck, and then you can recycle them and use them over even like something like Sky Strikers, because you can put all of the things back into the grave, all of the extra deck monsters back into your extra deck, and then recycle them that way. Just an interesting card from that design standpoint. You can even put back extra deck monsters and you can reuse them over and over and over. Also, this card's a level 10, so if you're making ring 10 plays, it can be very useful. In addition to that, this card has a variety of other good uses to it. So when this card declares an attack, you can send any monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard. It does not have to be an Exodia card that you send to the graveyard. So you can Foolish Burial essentially anything. This lets you recycle anything and Foolish Burial anything you want. Also, this card gains 1000 attack for every normal monster in the graveyard. That is not only Exodia pieces, that is any normal monster. So as long as you can fill up your graveyard with more normal monsters, so like in the case of World Chalice, you fill up your graveyard with more normal monsters, you can easily you can refill your graveyard with normal monsters, which is obviously very, very good. And then you can do more damage that way. And then its last effect is if you send 5 Exodia pieces to the graveyard with the attack effect, which is you declare an attack, send a card to the graveyard, send an Exodia piece to the graveyard. If you send 5 Exodia pieces to the graveyard through this, you win the duel automatically. So it does have a win condition. And that win condition is really not that great because you have to essentially go through 5 battle phases, and this has to survive. And this card has no protection whatsoever. But the first parts of this card's effect are actually really generic and really good. It can be used in just about any deck that needs to recycle its graveyard. So for that reason, it is a B tier card. Might even be a little higher because it has seen actually quite some meta play over the years. Recently it's fallen off a bit. Honestly, you can even use this card in a deck like Unchained. Like Unchained is probably one of the better meta. I think it is at the time of this recording this video, it is the best deck in the game. And in Unchained, you put a lot of you essentially go through all of your Unchained monsters. They get destroyed, it goes to the graveyard, it summons another one, and you keep going through this loop. And the great thing about this deck is you fill up your graveyard with Unchained, and then you can just activate Exodios and then put all of those Unchained cards back into your deck and then continue playing. So it's a really, really good card. So next up is Exodia. This is easily an S tier. This actually, funny enough, just topped recently. It's almost incredible. People are very creative with Exodia. This is one of the biggest, most popular archetypes that have ever existed in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. It has a lot of intrigue because in the first episode, Yugi defeated Kaiba, and then there's so many characters that have used Exodia over the years, and it's such a popular concept. You have Adrian and GX. Obviously, you have the Rare Hunter in Battle City. You have the fact that Weevil threw the Exodia pieces into the water. You have Gozaburo Kaiba. You have so many people that played Exodia over the years in different decks and different variations, even in the show. And then obviously in real life, this deck has seen so much meta play over the years, from so much evolution of how it's played. So most recently, there was a guy at a YCS that actually played Exodia and was doing quite well. He was featured on a feature match. He was doing very well. I think he was 3-1 when they featured him, or he was 3-0 when they featured him. But still, it's pretty incredible for Exodia in 2023 to still be that good. It's almost incredible. Over the years, it's topped so many times. GOAT format, Reaper format, you name the format, it's pretty much topped in so many different formats. Recently, I'm not gonna lie, it's fallen off, just because there are so many hand traps in the game that it's tough to resolve in Exodia, especially like a going first Exodia. It's very tough to kind of do it successfully. You can do it a couple of times, but with modern hand traps, it's actually really tough to consistently do. But over the years, Exodia, this has by far been the best way to win with Exodia. Yeah, and just like that, all of the pieces are quite important. I'm gonna put all of the pieces in A tier, just because, you know, all of the pieces are the enablers to allow Exodia to play, but without you know, it's basically like Exodia is the main thing. It's S tier. All the pieces are good, but unfortunately they are bricks without Exodia. They're just normal monsters that are even weaker than Karibo, except for the right arm. For some reason, the right arm is always the cheapest piece. It is cheaper than the left arm by a significant margin. It's cheaper than the legs. Why is this piece always cheaper? I don't get it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in F tier. Something is up with that. There's something they're not telling us. I don't know why this piece is always so cheap. But yeah, all of the Exodia pieces, I'd say somewhere around S tier, A tier. Obviously, the head's going to be better than the pieces, because it's just, without the head, you basically have a bunch of limbs. Next is True Exodia. This is actually an OCG exclusive. I'm going to put this in C tier. This is a win condition, but I don't think it's that good of a win condition. You can set it up, but it's a bit complicated. So basically what this does is, if this card is on the field, and all 4 of the other Exodia pieces are on the field, so basically, you know, the 4 limbs are on the field, and this card is on the field, the opponent of the player wins the duel. Meaning, you have to summon this card onto your opponent's board in order to resolve it, and then you have to summon all of the pieces onto your board, or, you know, if they're on your opponent's board. But basically, you have to put all the pieces onto the board, and then you have to put this thing on your opponent's board, and then you win the duel. And that is a very, very, very convoluted way to set up Exodia. It's like so many steps. I almost want to put it in D tier. It is, I probably put it in D tier. It is a possible thing, but it requires so many steps. Like, you have to essentially use some kind of card to give this to your opponent. So there's a lot of cards that actually give your opponent cards, so like Shien Spies and Geonator Transverser and Creature Swap. Like, there are tons of cards that can do that, but honestly speaking, this is so convoluted, such a mess. I would probably say it's in D tier. It's just so difficult to do. Also, it's an OCG exclusive, like totally OCG exclusive. It's not a Master Duel. It's not in the TCG. It is exclusive just to the OCG, and it's one of the frustrating aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! I've always found this frustrating when you have cards that are locked behind certain regions. It's really annoying. This is one of the cards drawn actually by Mr. Takahashi, and I don't know if we'll ever get it, because all of those cards have just sort of been region locked into wherever they've already been put. So that kind of sucks for us, but I'd say probably D tier from a win condition standpoint. Next is Exodia, the Great Defender. This is the Exodia that fought Zorg in the anime. This card's really cool, but again, it's a little bit like True Exodia, where its win condition is a bit complicated. So basically, you just summon this card by attributing 5 monsters, and then its attack and defense is equal to the 5 monsters that you attributed. The tribute summon it's not a tribute summon, it's a special summon, so that aspect is actually really good. This is not difficult to do whatsoever, simply because in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, again, summoning 5 monsters is, you could do it with your eye. You could put a blindfold on me, I'll summon 5 monsters. Like, it's very easy to do, because it's just very easy to special summon and spam a lot of monsters out. A lot of decks can do it. Some of the simplest decks can spam 5 monsters. Trap Trick can spam 5 monsters. But yeah, you can spam 5 monsters very, very easily, and then you tribute them, and this monster essentially becomes a gigantic monster. It has no protection whatsoever other than its attack and defense stat. And then this card has an additional effect where if it destroys a fiend, specifically a dark fiend monster by battle, you win the duel automatically. This is again a callback to the anime where Exodia fought Zorg. And basically, yes, if you destroy a dark fiend, you win the duel. This has a variety of issues. Number one, more than likely your opponent is not playing a dark fiend deck. It's possible your opponent's playing Unchained, in which case, yeah, lucky you won the duel. But in other cases, you're actually going to have to find a way to put, this card, you're going to find a way to put a dark fiend monster onto your opponent's board. Again, similar situation, Shien Spy, or creature swap, geonated transverser. One of the goofy ways to do it, you have to put it onto your opponent's board, and then you have to attack over with this monster. The problem with this is it is a win condition, but it's a going second win condition. And the issue with that is you have to play through your opponent's interruptions, negates, hand traps, and then you have to tribute 5 monsters, and then you have to give them a Dark Fiend monster, and then you get to win the duel. Like, you have to go through all of these steps, playing all of these bricks, and finding a way to search this card. By the way, you have to search this card. How do you get to this card if you don't already have it in your hand? I mean, I guess you could like start Yugioh and draw it and do different things, but for the most part, this is actually not super easy to do. I'd say probably C tier is fair as a purely like a monster standpoint. It's actually not bad because it has a lot of attack and defense, and the win condition is kind of cool, but C tier is probably fair. All right, next up is Exod Master of the Guard. I'd say Exod Master of the Guard is probably in D tier. This released in the Earth structure deck, which was I thought it was a cool structure deck when it came out. It's one of those things where as a kid you think it's really broken, really cool, but when you grow up you kind of realize like how much it sucks. But yeah, this deck I thought was always really, really cool. It basically is all about Sphinxes and Exodia and flip monsters, but not flip effect. It's not flip monsters. They're monsters that activate when they are flipped. Very different from flip effect monsters. I know it's like confusing from a ruling standpoint, but basically it's a bunch of monsters that flip. When they flip face up, they have an effect. They don't work the same as flip effects, which are like always mandatory. When they're flipped, something goes off. These are very different. You have to flip them face up, and most of the time they can flip themselves face down. Cool deck, but it just couldn't survive the format that it was in. Basically what Exod does is it's like the boss monster for the deck. It basically allows you to contribute a Sphinx to special summon it. It has 4,000 defense, tons of defense, and then basically you sit on this card, you leave it in defense mode. Every single time an earth monster is flipped face up, you inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Again, this has 4,000 defense, so you can sit on it pretty easily because it's got a ton of defense. But that's pretty much all that it does. The card is actually kind of cool. Again, from a design standpoint, I kind of like that. I even like this card in the deck because it added kind of an additional win condition to the deck, because the deck is essentially, you try to slow things down. You have gravity binds, level limit area Bs, all of that stuff, and you essentially try to slow things down. And then this gives the deck a win condition because you put this in defense. It's 4,000 defense, and every time one of your monsters is flipped, while you have all of this protection in your back row, you get to burn for 1,000 over and over and over. The problem with this is this just did not survive in the format that it was released in. This was released in 2006, which, if you recall, is right after GOAT format, which is called Reaper format. Reaper format absolutely demolished this deck. You could not be competitive with this deck because you have Cyber Dragon, Cyber Twin Dragon, Power Bond, you have Cyber Stein at that time, Last Resort. Like, there are so many absolutely amazing cards at this time that this deck was not going to compete through Reaper format. And then right after Reaper format, you got to think about it. What do you get after Reaper format? You have Dad format. You have Lightsworns around the corner. You have Gladiator Beast. This deck is not competing against Gladiator Beast. This deck just was released a little bit too late, and then they stopped supporting it whatsoever. They never supported this whole like flip face up earth mechanic ever again, and it's sad because I thought it was always a cool mechanic. I thought the design of the deck was really cool, but it was just too slow, and it was not going to survive in the format that it was in. There was just too much going on. And then after that it just got worse and worse year by year, and obviously today this deck is virtually unplayable. You are not beating Kashtira with a earth flip deck. It's just not happening. So unfortunately it is in D tier. Next is Exodia Legendary Incarnate. I want to say this is in B tier. I think this is actually a good card, and this is the kind of support that Exodia needs. It needs more of a grind game type of way to play. The way to play Exodia right now is FTK or nothing, and I'm not a huge fan of FTK or nothing. I don't like playing Exodia that way. I would rather play Exodia over a course of a few turns, have my opponent, allow them to have interruptions. Like, I like playing a back and forth game when I'm trying to get Exodia over a course of time, but unfortunately they don't really support, like, release a lot of that support. So Exodia the Incarnate basically does this. You can special summon it by tributing a Forbidden One monster. So any of them, any of the limbs or the head, you can tribute it. This card is unaffected by all other card effects, yours and your opponent's. Very good. They rarely print that onto Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and this is a few years old. So for them to print this a few years ago is really, quite telling. And then it basically has an effect where it gains 1000 attack for every Forbidden One card in the graveyard. So this can have a significant amount of attack sometimes, especially if you have a lot of Forbidden One cards in the graveyard. And then it additionally has an effect where during the end phase it's mandatory, you can add back during the end phase, you have to add back a Forbidden One monster from your graveyard to your hand. It's mandatory. You have to do it. So this is going to debuff itself during the end phase every single time, because obviously it doesn't gain the 1000 attack anymore. And then it has another effect where if it's destroyed by battle, because it's unaffected by everything, so your opponent has to destroy it by battle, you can reveal Forbidden One cards in your hand and then draw cards equal to the amount of cards that you revealed. Again, top to bottom, I think this is a great card, and I think this is the direction that they need to go with Exodia, because again, FTK Exodia, no one wants to play against it. No one honestly even really wants to play it, because it's a one-sided game where either you get the FTK off or you don't, and the problem with that is it's not a fun way to play the deck. I'd rather play more cards like this and get Exodia over 10 turns or 5 turns even, because let's be honest, Modern Yu-Gi-Oh is not going to last 10 turns. If I can get Exodia over 5 turns and my opponent has, the ability to respond and negate stuff and banish stuff and try to stop me from getting Exodia, that's the kind of game I want to play, not, I drew everything in one turn, unfortunately. All right, next up is Obliterate. I'd say Obliterate is in B tier. From a design standpoint, I actually really like this card. It's similar to Exodia the Incarnate. From a design standpoint, I really, really like it, because it kind of builds that slower version of Exodia, which I personally would rather play than like FTK Exodia. And basically what this card does is you can target a monster on the field, either player side of the field, and then return it to the hand, and as cost, you send an Exodia from your hand or from the deck to the graveyard, which essentially enables the Exodia the Legendary Incarnate. So these cards kind of like enable each other. This card's cool because number one, it's an interruption against your opponent, but it can also be a way to protect your Exodia pieces. So if your opponent has like an effect that banishes a monster, you can activate this, bounce your own Exodia piece to the hand, and then you can bounce your own Exodia piece to the hand and protect your Exodia pieces from being banished on the field. That is really cool. And then if this card leaves the field, the spawn trap card zone, for any reason, your opponent, your card, you can add an Exodia or either Exodia or Forbidden One card from your graveyard back to your hand. So this is just another way in Archetype to recover your cards from the graveyard, and that's important because it's better than playing like that. It's better than playing like that spell card that people used to play, the Dark Factory of Mass Production, the one that allows you to get back normal monsters from the graveyard. Like, this is so much better because it's in Archetype. So I like the card quite a bit. Yeah, so that's the entire tier list. As a little discussion afterwards, because I like to include these now. How do we improve the Archetype? What should we do? So to improve Exodia, honestly, in my opinion, I think we need more cards like Exodia Legendary Incarnate, more cards like Obliterate. These are the kinds of cards that we actually need to make the Archetype more playable. I don't think we need more win conditions like True Exodia and the Exodia Legendary Defender. We definitely need more stuff for Exodia Necros. Exod was in the wrong direction. This is actually not a bad card generically speaking, but I think more cards in this direction would actually make Exodia more playable and more fun to play, by the way, because that's usually the goal, is to make these decks more fun to play. Like, I don't know if Exodia will ever be tier 1, but it would be nice to make this deck significantly more playable. Maybe a tier 3 deck, and it needs more cards like this that can essentially elongate the game over 5 to 10 turns and have back and forth where your opponent can do stuff to prevent you from playing and you can do stuff to prevent your opponent from playing. But the goal should be to draw Exodia over a course of time, and I think that's the way they should fix Exodia. I wouldn't mind 5 to 10 new Exodia cards released maybe in a set of some kind. There are still Exodia cards in GX that were activated that were never actually released ever, but they might be a little too broken for modern Yu-Gi-Oh, because they add Exodia a little too easily. As far as Exodia Necros, this card, I would love a retrain for this card, just because it is so terrible. This card is just like the payoff for getting off Exodia Necros is a monster that was even bad for the standards when it was released. So it would be nice to get a retrain of Exodia Necros, just because from an artwork standpoint, it's one of my favorite cards. Not even just Exodia, but it's one of my favorite cards of all time. It looks so cool, and I would love to get a different version of this card. But that is everything today. Thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day. La, 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 la.